What's going on, y'all? It's GUMGUMTCG here, back again with another video, and today I got a quick one for you. This is going to be a ban list prediction. Alright, so we know that we're about in the middle of the OP04 format. OP05 comes out at the beginning of December, and OP04 came out right near the end of September, so we're hitting that middle point, similar to when we got a ban list in the OP03 format, turning it into what they called the OP03.5 format. And I wanted to do a quick ban list prediction, talking about some cards that I think will either be banned or limited after this list. So before we get into that, I want to say if you hate red decks as much as I do, then make sure to go pick up your All My Homies Hate Red Decks hats and shirts. I have a link to that down in the description below. I also wanted to shout out Dueling Guard. If you haven't heard of Dueling Guard, they're the most amazing TCG accessory company on the market. They make anime-inspired TCG accessories such as binders, deck boxes, and playmats. And if you haven't checked them out, make sure to go check them out. I'll leave a link to their website in the description below, as well as code GUMGUMTCG you can use for a discount at checkout. What? You haven't heard of Dueling Guard? Dueling Guard is the best TCG accessory company on the market. They have high quality deck boxes, binders, and playmats made for people who enjoy playing and collecting trading card games in style. They have tons of designs based off of fan favorite animes such as One Piece, Bleach, Full Metal Alchemist, and many more. They hit the ground running earlier this year, making high quality TCG accessories with beautiful designs that have sold out many times. So if you haven't picked up any of their products, make sure to do so before they sell out again. I have a few deck boxes and playmats from them already and can attest to how they don't cut any corners when it comes to quality, performance, and design. I highly recommend their products and use them every time I play cards. Be sure to check the description below for a link to their site and use code GUMGUMTCG for a discount at checkout. Alright, y'all, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into this. So I'm just going to start things off hot. We've seen in the top cut, Edward Newgate deck taking everything by storm. This deck has topped ever since that it has been a leader or a deck, and I think that it is about time for this leader to go, at least for the TCG. It is not a problem in the OCG. They really don't have that big of a problem with it. It does come up here and there, but now that they're in an OP05 format, everything's kind of dominated by purple, blue, cards like that. But for us, apparently, we cannot beat Edward Newgate. So, in my opinion, I do think that we're going to see this be the first leader restriction in the game. And it's just because of how dominant it is in the top cuts. You know, if we were to take this leader away, I think we'd see a lot more blue and yellow representation. Blue has a really good matchup against Edward Newgate, but sometimes suffers into decks such as Law or Zoro. So, when Newgate's flooding the top cut, those other decks could perform against it, but we also have decks like Law and Zoro performing just as well, keeping those other decks just gated out from top cut. You know, if this leader does go, I could see Katakuri being a very dominant force. So we have a card that we're going to talk about here in a little bit about that deck, but I do think that Newgate's going to go. It's very strong. It's basically draw 2 every turn and your leader 6k. It's really broken. You get access to some really incredible cards, and I think that this leader is just very problematic. We have a new Luffy leader coming out with 6k, and I do foresee people deck building with that, but it not being as strong because you don't get that draw, and you're only at 3 life. So, yeah, unfortunately, I do think that it is Newgate's time to go. Speaking of Newgate, we got 9-cost Newgate, and I put this on here just to talk about it. You know, I don't think that it's that much of a problem anymore. This card was very problematic at 4, but now that we only have it at 1, you can't do it back to back, and that's when it was really effective. You know, you would make your leader 8 or 7k for multiple turns in a row, and also have this big body established, being able to destroy things on the field. I think this card's just going to stay at 1. A lot of people are hoping for it to come unrestricted, but in my opinion, I believe that 1 is the right number for this card, and that's where it's going to stay. It's very strong. The 1-of is strong, but a lot of decks are starting to move away from playing this card, so I don't see it going up or getting hit. If they do move it up, I think it'll be a problem because a lot of decks will take advantage of that, but for now, because it's at 1, a lot of decks aren't playing it, and I don't see it moving anywhere. Next, we got Curly Dadan, and this is going to be a hit to Law and Zoro. Zoro likes to search a lot with this card to find their small 1-drops that they can use, like Buggy and Izo, to get a lot more searches. Also Nami, and then they could just load up a couple Dawn on those characters and their leader, and then swing for 5k multiple times very early into the game when other decks can barely have a board established. And I think Curly Dadan is the root of the problem. This card lets you search any one drop in your deck, whether it be Makino, Otama, Nami, Izo, Buggy, whatever it is. It searches any red one drop in Zoro. And then in Law, it also searches those cards, which search for more. You can bounce it, search again. It becomes very problematic, and those decks can generate a lot more advantage than any other deck in the game, and then also swing way more times than any other deck in the game. And that's a problem. I think that Curly is the problem, and if we limit Curly to Dawn, or at least limit it, maybe ban it. If they limit it, then Law and Zoro will see a lot less top cut representation because their decks become less consistent, but they will still be very powerful decks. You know, they still have access to all the other searchers. They just can't search for their searchers. When you can search for something to search for something else, I think that that's when it becomes a problem. You get two bodies on board that then you can load up and attack with, and you also generated that advantage over your opponent with bodies and hand advantage. I think that's what the problem is with this card. So I do see Curly going to at least one just to hit Law and Zoro a little bit, but we're going to move on to the next card, and it's another card I just wanted to talk about, like the Newgate. I do think that the blocker Marco's also going to stay at 1. I think this card's incredibly strong, and when you're playing a Whitebeard Pirate-based deck, this card is just an infinite blocker that is never getting removed off the board. Blue doesn't have a problem with it. They just 3,000 worlds it, and it's gone. But when there's multiple, you can't really do that. So I think that this card's still going to stay at 1 as well. You know, they released 2 very strong cards at the same time, and that's why Newgate was such a strong deck. You could play multiple Marcos and then drop in multiple Newgates on top of that, be insulated from attacks with your Marcos and all your hand advantage, along with your 6k leader, or 8k if you have the Newgate on field. And blocker Marco is just a real big problem, especially for yellow. Yellow has a hard time dealing with multiple blockers on field. There's not a lot of removal in yellow, so I think that this card's also going to stay to 1. It's very strong, but I think if they were to increase it, it would see play in a lot of decks. A lot of decks would just shift to be more of a Whitebeard Pirates focused build. So that's why I see this card staying at 1 and not moving up or down at all on the list. We're going to jump past yellow real quick and go to Rad Beam, and this card's just got to go. This is a Saki 1-of that is also searchable in all your red decks with Nami. I think that it's incredibly strong. You can also search it off a Buggy. It's incredibly strong. If your opponent doesn't know that you have it and they think you have a guard point or something else like that, this can win you a game. I think that's just too Saki for this game. You know, I think 1 just feels bad. You know, it's the 1-of, like in Yu-Gi-Oh! They have the 1-of Harpy's Feather Duster against the trap deck. You got the 1-of Radical Beam when your opponent's attacking for lethal. It's kind of shitty, and I think this card just needs to go. It's very strong, and there's not another really good card like this. You know, Red already has Guard Point, which I think is strong enough. I don't think that they need a Radical Beam on top of it. So I do see Rad Beam going to 0. And again, these are all just my thoughts and opinions. If you have your own thoughts and opinions, make sure to post them in the comments below or in my Discord. If you're not a part of the Discord, make sure to join the Discord. I'll drop a link to that in the description below. And once we hit 100 members in the Discord, I'll be running a free box tournament. So make sure you get in there before we hit 100. Yeah, that's my take on Rad Beam and all those other red cards. I don't think there's any problems with green cards, blue cards, black cards, or purple cards. I think all those cards are fair and balanced for right now. But I will have a video coming out soon talking about how purple is the new red moving into OP05 and how some of those cards are problematic. But for now, let's talk about our last card, and the last culprit is going to be Charlotte Linlin. This card is a blowout. I'm just going to start from the top here. It's a 10 cost body, so it does take your whole turn. However, it's 12,000 power. You're not getting rid of this card by attacking it. I will tell you that. I'll tell you it again. You're not going to get rid of this card by attacking it. I don't think it matters. They're going to counter out of it. They're going to block it, whatever. The only real way to get rid of this is if you're playing maybe a Navy deck and you were to lower its cost and pop it, or you're playing a blue deck and you use Red Rock. I think that this card is insanely powerful because it creates a 2 life difference. And in this game, a 1 life difference is fine, but when it's a 2 life difference, that can be the beginning of the end of the game. You know, they drop this card on you when you're at 3 life, you go down to 2, and let's say they were also at 3, they go up to 4, you now have to deal with 5 hits to their leader successfully, when now they only have to deal 3. And on top of it, the next turn they get to swing with this massive body. It's just very strong and unfair. Following that up, if they do it multiple turns in a row, if they drop 1 and rip you down to 2 life, and then they drop another and rip you down to 1 life, then hit you for 12k, unless you have a blocker, you're taking that hit, and they're likely to have other bodies on field as well as their leader. Most of the time it's Katakuri playing this and topping. You know, Big Mom can also play this, and the black-yellow Big Mom can also play this, but Katakuri is the deck I'm talking about here, and when they have so much searchability and they can stack their life and stuff like that, I think that this card becomes a big problem. You know, they can stack it, and the next turn they can swing, see what they stacked, move it around, and prepare for later in the game. Or if they see one of these in their life, they can put it under there for later in the game, wait to draw it, and then they have 2 in hand, or 3 in hand. And 2 or 3 of these turn after turn is really a game ender, in my opinion. I don't think it really matters what deck you're playing, unless you're playing another yellow deck like Katakuri, and you can also drop them turn after turn. But then it's kind of who dropped the first one. You know, if your opponent dropped the first one, they get that 12k swing first against you. That can really be devastating. I think that this card's a blowout, and if all these hits to red are successful, that yellow's really going to rise, because one of the fallbacks of yellow is that this card, as well as the 7-drop Charlotte Linlin and the 8-drop Katakuri, are almost ineffective against Newgate. The Katakuri's decent, but this Linlin and the other Linlin are basically useless, because by the time you get to play this or the other one, they just don't have life. So you're not trashing anything, you're just going up a life, which is fine, but with the 7 cost, they can just choose to trash one when they have no life left, and you just play a vanilla body. That's it. There's no effect. And that's kind of the problem with Katakuri, and why it has a hard time topping right now is because of all the Newgate in the room and half their cards being dead. They're really good cards. I think that if they were to restrict this to 1, it would be a lot more fair of a card. You know, it's searchable. Yellow has a lot of ways to search and find their cards in Pudding and Sparrow, as well as looking through their life. So they will be bound to find it, but I think that 1 is a lot more bearable to deal with than 2 or 3 or even 4. That's closing out the game instantly. I mean, after 2, they get 2 12k swings and they rip 2 of your life, and they've gone up 2 life in just 2 turns. Unless your board is full of 9 to 10k bodies, you're not hitting back at them. It's just not going to happen, especially when they have all the new really good triggers out of life, like Sanji and Beige and even Brule, just to trigger mid-attack and stop you from your next one. Yellow is a really strong color, and I think that right now it's just being restricted by a really strong leader. So that's going to be it for today's video, y'all. Like I said, I wanted to keep it short and sweet. This is just a small take on the ban. This is just my take on the ban list that I think will be coming out in the next week or so. So if you have any takes or opinions on this, let me know down in the comments below. And if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe before we hit 500 subscribers. We're trying to get to 500. And yeah, I really just wanted to put my own opinion out there and see what everybody else is thinking. I think it's imminent and soon, and I think the red days are numbered, especially with OP05 around the corner. Purple really becomes very strong, so I don't think they're going to go crazy with the red hits, but I do see Newgate getting banned, Dadan going to 1, and Radbeam going to 1, as well as Marco and Newgate also staying at 1. I guess the boat, I didn't talk about the boat. Boat's not going anywhere. That card's too strong. It needs to stay banned. But those are my opinions and thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace.